This video is on operations with radical expressions. So we're just going to start by simplifying some radical expressions. So if I have the square root of 75, I want to break this down to its prime factors. So 75 breaks down to, let's see, 5 times 5 times 3, because 5 times 5 is 25, and 25 times 3 gives us 75. So remember, because it's a square root, if you find something that's multiplied by itself, it can go to the outside. Since 5 is multiplied by itself, we can bring a 5 out. And we're left with the square root of 3 because it doesn't have anything to multiply itself by, and so it has to stay under that square root or radical sign. Let's try one a little more complicated. All right, so this time we have the cube root. And let's see, I'm going to say this is equal to, so 54 is 2 times 27, and 27 is 3 times 9, and 9 is 3 times 3. So this is 2 times 27, which 27 is 3 times 9, and 9 is 3 times 3. But it's negative. And I do want to get that negative out, and it is a cube root. And I know a negative times a negative is a positive, and a positive times a negative is a negative. So because I had 3 3's multiplied together, I knew if I made those negatives, I could bring my negative out. So I have a negative 3 that can come out. So that's just looking at the number part. We also have to look at the variables. So we have x to the power of 6. So to find the cube root, there's 2 sets of 3 that are in 6. So I know that I can bring out an x squared, because x squared times x squared times x squared is x to the 6th. And I can write this underneath. X squared times x squared times x squared is x to the 6th. And because I have x squared multiplied by itself 3 times, I know that can come out. And now I'm looking at my y's. Okay, so this one, I can bring out 1y because I have y to the 4th is y times y times y times y. So there's one group of 3 y's. So that means I can bring a y out. So what I'm left with is a cube root of I have a 2 times y, or 2y. So this is my radical simplified. So I'm going to have you go ahead and try 2 very similar problems. And when you're ready, I'll go through the answers with you. Go ahead and pause it here, and I will start the problem. So this one, the negative's on the outside, so we know automatically our answer is going to be negative. So I'm just going to look at what I can break this down to. So we have negative, it's a 4th root. 112 is 2 times 56. 56 is 2 times 28. 28 breaks down to 2 times 14. And 14 breaks down to 2 times 7. So that means we have 4 2's. Remember, 4th root, so there has to be 4 of them multiplied together that can come out. So that negative's on the outside, 2, and the 4th root of 7 is left. So you always have to pay attention to what the root is. So how many numbers do you have to have multiplied together in order for them to come out? All right, so then this one, we have cube root, and I'm just going to break this down. All right, 250 breaks down to, let's see, we have 10 times 25. 10 is 2 times 5. So this is 10 times 25, which is 5 times 5. So I have a group of 5's that can come out. Remember, it's a cube root. So we can bring a 5 out. All right, m to the 5th. So we have one group of 3 in there. So m times m times m that can come out. But we're left with m squared underneath, because we'd have to have 3 of them in order to come out. So then look at n. I'm just going to bring this down. Times, we have 3 groups of n. So n cubed times n cubed times n cubed is n to the 9th, because there's 3 groups. It's coming out. So we have n to the power of 3. We're left with the cube root of 2 times m squared, or 2m squared. All right, so that's just simplifying. Now we're going to do the product of radicals. So if you have 2, in this case, square roots multiplied together, we're going to multiply what's underneath the square root together. So it's going to stay under that square root sign. So we have the square root of 3 times 6. Because it's underneath, once you multiply, it stays underneath. Well, I'm just going to break this down a little further. So the square root of 3 times 6 breaks down to 3 times 2, meaning we can bring a 3 out, and we're left with a square root of 2. All right, so let's try one more. This one, because we're multiplying 3 square roots of 15 times 2 square roots of 5. We're going to multiply the numbers on the outside. So we have 3 times 2 gives us 6. Square root of 15 times 5. Because they're underneath, they have to stay underneath, and we're just multiplying together. Well, I can break down 15. So we have 6. Square root of 15 is 3 times 5. And that's multiplied by 5, so that means a 5 can come out. So we have to multiply it by what's already on the outside. So 6 times 5 gives us 30, and we're left with a square root of 3. All right, so go ahead and try 2 more problems. Very similar. Pause it here, and when you're ready, I'll go through the answers with you. All right, so this one's a square root of 5. I'm going to break this down. 10 breaks down to 5 times 2, meaning we can bring a 5 out. You have 5 square roots of 2. And then we have -4 times 3 is -12. Square root of 6 breaks down to 2 times 3, multiplied by 14, which breaks down to 2 times 7. Because we have a pair of 2's, we can bring a 2 out. So -12 times 2 is -24. Square root of 3 times 7 is 21. All right, hopefully you're able to get those ones. Now we're going to do quotient of radicals. So the quotient is the answer to a division problem. So when you have a fraction or a quotient, this could be a division problem, underneath the square root sign. Well, this one, I can reduce my fraction. So this can be the square root of 4/16. I can divide top and bottom by 4, and we get 1/4. Okay, so you can reduce this even more. We're going to take the square root of 1 over the square root of 4. So you're going to take the square root of the top and the bottom individually to reduce it further. So this gives us square root of 1 is 1 over the square root of 4 is 2. So our answer is 1/2. All right. Next, all right, I'm just going to split this one up to start with. We have the square root of a cubed, b to the 4th, over the square root of 20. All right, so a cubed, well, that's a times a times a, meaning we can bring 1a out, because we'd have a pair of a's with 1a left underneath. And b to the 4th, well, we can bring b squared out, because b squared times b squared gives us b to the 4th, and there is 1a left underneath. Over, all right, 20. This breaks down to the square root of 2 times 10, which 10 is 2 times 5. So we can bring a 2 out. So I'm just going to rewrite this as, whoops, we have ab squared, the square root of a, over 2 times the square root of 5. All right. So here, you cannot have a square root in the denominator. So we're going to multiply top and bottom by the square root of 5. So that means we have on top ab squared, square root of, remember, multiply what's underneath the square root. 5 times a is 5a, over, we have 2 times, or 2 square root of 5 times 5, which means we can bring a 5 out. So this final answer is ab squared, square root of 5a, over 2 times 5 is 10. So this is our answer. So that one did take a few steps. I'm going to have you go ahead and try 2 on your own that are very similar. You can pause it here. I'll go through the answers when you're ready. All right, so here we have the square root of 81 divided by 9 is 9, and the square root of 9 is 3. All right, this one is a cube root. All right, so we have cube root of 24 over the cube root of 10x. All right, 10 is 2 times 5, which doesn't help us at all when we have the cube root. But 24 we can break down. Okay. So I'm going to look at this one, and 24, well, that breaks down to cube root of 24 is the cube root of 2 times 12, which 12 is 2 times 6, 6 is 2 times 3. So I can bring a 2 out. So this gives me 2 cube roots of 3 over the cube root of 10x. But remember, I said you can't have a radical in the denominator. So normally you're just going to multiply, as I did up here, the denominator by itself. But if I just multiply top and bottom, anything you do to the one, you have to do the other. So the cube root of 10x over the cube root of 10x is just 1, and that's why you can multiply it by itself. But this just means I have the cube root of 10x times 10x. So I can't bring anything else out. So you have to look at the root, and you have to multiply it by itself, in this case 3 times. So if it was a fourth root, it would be times itself 4 times. So we have another cube root of 10x. All right, so this gives us, we have 2 times the cube root of, we'll have 3 times 10 is 30, times 10 is 300, and x times x is x squared, over, because we have the cube root of 10x times 10x times 10x, that means 10x is multiplied by itself 3 times, so we can bring 10x out. And I know I can't reduce the 300 because we have 3 times 2 times 5 times 2 times 5, so there's nothing multiplied by itself 3 times. All right, so we're going to add and subtract radicals. You can add and subtract like radical expressions, meaning if they have the same square root or cube root, if the root part is the same, then you can add or subtract them. If not, well, then they're not like terms. Okay, so I'm going to break down square root of 147. So this is the square root of, let's see, 7 times 7 is 49, and 49 times 3 is 147. Plus 12 breaks down to 2 times 6, and 6 is 2 times 3. So I can bring out a 7, I can bring out a 2, and we get 7 times the square root of 3 plus 2 times the square root of 3. So they're both multiplied by the square root of 3, meaning they're like terms. So we can add the numbers in front. 7 plus 2 gives us 9, square roots of 3. And that is our answer. So let's look at this one. See if we can reduce these at all. So we have 2 square root of 18 is 2 times 9, and 9 is 3 times 3. Minus 3 square roots of 5 plus 5. 8 breaks down to 2 times 4, and 4 is 2 times 2. So I can bring a 3 out. I can bring a 2 out. 2 times 3 is 6 square root of 2 minus 3 square root of 5 plus 2 times 5 is 10 square root of 2. So these two are like terms, they can be combined. 6 plus 10 is 16 square root of 2 minus 3 square roots of 5. I'm going to have you go ahead and try 2 just like that. Okay, and I'm going to go through the answers with you. So for 50, this is 5 times 2, meaning we can bring out a 5 square root of 2 plus 32 is, let's see, we have 4 times 2, so bring a 4 out, square root of 2, minus the square root of 3. So combine, 5 plus 4 is 9, square roots of 2, minus the square root of 3. And last one, 27 breaks down to 3 times 3 times 3, so bring a group of 3 out. 7 times 3 is 21, square root of 3, minus 12 breaks down to 2 times 2 times 3, so bring out a group of 2. 2 times 2 is 4, square root of 3, plus 300 is 3 times 10 times 10. So you have 10 multiplied by itself, so bring out the 10, and you're left with a square root of 3. So all of these can be combined. So we have 21 plus 10, or sorry, 21 minus 4 plus 10. So we get a total of 27, square root of 3. All right, a couple more that we need to do. All right, we're multiplying radicals. Okay, in this one, we have square root of 5 minus 3 squared, meaning we have the square root of 5 minus 3 multiplied by the square root of 5 minus 3. And we're just going to distribute that first term in the first parentheses with everything in the second set of parentheses, then distribute the second term with everything in the second set. So square root of 5 times square root of 5, well, that's just the square root of 5 times 5, meaning we can bring a 5 out. Square root of 5 times negative 3 is negative 3 square roots of 5. Negative 3 times the square root of 5 is negative 3 square root of 5. Negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9. Combine your like terms. We have our like terms. So 5 plus 9 gives us 14. Negative 3 minus 3 is negative 6 square root of 5. Okay, here we have 2 times 4 is 8. Square root of 3 times 2 is 6. Then we're going to multiply here. So we have 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. Square root of 3. Don't forget that's there. Now we're going to multiply here. 3 times 4, positive 12. And we have the square root of 2 times 2, which we can bring out. Then we have 3 times negative 3 is negative 9, square root of 2. So we don't have any like terms, but I'm just going to simplify this. So we have 8 square root of 6 minus 6 square root of 3. 12 times 2 is positive 24, minus 9 square root of 2. All right, I'm going to have you go ahead and try 2 just like that. When you're ready, I'll go through them. All right, 7 plus the square root of 10 times 7 plus the square root of 10. 7 times 7 is 49. 7 times the square root of 10, 7 square roots of 10. Square root of 10 times 7, 7 square roots of 10. Square root of 10 times square root of 10 is 10, because you'll have the square root of 10 times 10. It's multiplied by itself. Combine like terms, 49 plus 10 is 59, plus 7, 14 square root of 10. One more just like this. All right, we have 2 times 3 is 6. Square root of 5 times 5, meaning we'll be able to bring this out. We have 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. Square roots of 5. Square root of 2 times 3 square roots of 5. So we'll have 3 square roots of 2 times 5 is 10. And then we have minus 3 square roots of 2. Whoops. 3 square roots of 2. So combine like terms, which it doesn't look like there are any, but we can bring a 5 out, and 6 times 5 gives us 30, minus 6 square roots of 5, plus 3 square roots of 10, minus 3 square roots of 2. Okay, last thing, then we're done. It's dividing radicals. So I'm just going to zoom in. Okay, you cannot have a radical in the denominator. So anytime you have something where you have a radical in the denominator and there's either addition or subtraction, you're going to multiply by the conjugate. So that means it's going to be the exact same thing. It's just going to be the opposite operation in between on top and bottom. So you're always going to use what's on bottom. So it's going to be the square root of 3 minus 1. This is a conjugate. Exact same thing on top, square root of 3 minus 1. Now, all I'm going to do is multiply. Think of these as their parentheses. Multiply what's on top, multiply what's on bottom. So, square root of 2 times the square root of 3 is the square root of 6. Minus square root of 2 times 1, square root of 2, over, this is where we're going to get rid of that square root. All right, square root of 3 times the square root of 3 is 3, because if you think about it, you'll have the square root of 3 times 3, meaning you can bring that 3 out. Square root of 3 times negative 1, negative square root of 3. 1 times the square root of 3 plus the square root of 3, and 1 times negative 1 is negative 1. These middle terms are opposites. One's positive, one's negative. They will cancel each other out. So we're left with the square root of 6 minus the square root of 2 over 3 minus 1 is 2. Do one more. Okay, I'm going to multiply top and bottom by the conjugate of the denominator, which would be 3 plus the square root of 5. Again, treat these as parentheses. 4 times 3 is 12. 4 times the square root of 5. Square root of 2 times 3. And square root of 2 times the square root of 5 is square root of 10. Over 3 times 3 is 9. 3 times the square root of 5. Negative square root of 5 times 3. And put that 3 in front. Make sure the square root of 5 is in back. So negative times the positive is a negative. Square root of 5 times the square root of 5 is 5. Because it's just square root of 5 times 5, which means you can bring a 5 out. Middle terms will cancel each other out. They're exactly the same, but one's positive, one's negative. So we have 12 plus 4 square roots of 5, 3 square roots of 2, square root of 10, over 9 minus 5 is 4. That's our answer. Okay, go ahead and try these two. You can pause it here, and when you're ready for the answers, I will go through them. All right, so multiplied by 4 plus the square root of 2 over 4 plus the square root of 2. So 3 times 4 is 12, plus 3 times the square root of 2 over 4 times 4 is 16, 4 times the square root of 2, negative square root of 2 times 4, negative times a positive is a negative, square root of 2 times the square root of 2 is 2. These cancel each other out. So you have 12 plus 3 square roots of 2 over 16 minus 2 is 14. And the very last one, multiply top and bottom by 5 minus square root of 3. Okay, so we get 2 times 3 is 10, 2 times negative square root of 3, negative square root of 3 times 5, and negative times a negative is a positive, square root of 3 times the square root of 3 is 3. On bottom, 5 times 5 is 25, 5 times a negative square root of 3, square root of 3 times 5, and positive times a negative is a negative, square root of 3 times square root of 3 is 3. On bottom, the middle two terms, whoops, this was supposed to be a 3. Middle two terms cancel each other out. On top, we have 10 plus 3 is 13. And we can combine these like terms. So negative 2 minus 5 is negative 7. Square roots of 3 over 25 minus 3 is 22. Hopefully that is the answer that you got.